The personality disorder or personality is affected by the external factors or the environment. Humanistic perspective, the history of this is back then, a lot of patients were maltreated because they assumed that being mentally ill is bad. So, Dorothea Dix, I think in America, she made a new movement that said that you have to really take good care of the patients or the mentally ill. So you have to really provide their needs. Externally, not only internally, it's not just a cure, you have to treat them properly. The advantage in behavioral perspective is that it's more external, so it's easier to identify what the problem is. So the advantage is it's more mechanistic. You're assuming that a person is easily deceived, like you eliminate the uniqueness of the person. So you assume that the child is a machine that once what you put in is what you put out. So in humanistic perspective, the advantage is it's more of an inner discovery. It's more you're helping the child to develop in his own way. You're making him discover himself and study himself better. Disadvantage is it's a little vague. You can't really measure it and you can't really study it well. So as a parent, you will really find a hard time identifying how can you help the child develop through time. Something bad, I get punished. If I do something good, I get rewards. As a parent, I would choose the humanistic perspective. So I think it's more of, you have to let the child have his own self-discovery, let him journey through the process of growing up. Just provide the external needs, the care, the proper attention, and then let him discover on his own what he wants to do with his life.
Christine Espinas, age 19. I'm single. I'm a student athlete at the De La Salle University, Manila. Well, for me, I think behavioral is more reward and punishment. You encourage a particular action or you discourage it. So, for humanistic, I think it's a more positive concept. Basically, knowing yourself and being able to use those strengths to your advantage. I think for me, the behavioral perspective is mas lumalamang siya kasi it's more of hating or not tolerating a particular act. So there's punishment involved. I think the disadvantage of it is pag hindi natuto yung child, you're gonna keep punishing him or her. So parang it's resorting to reward or punishment. So for the humanistic perspective, one of the advantages is that, yun nga, I think for me, walang punishment sa humanistic. It's all about encouraging something na what's better for that child. Not too strict, but not too lenient rin. So I think it leans more on the behavioral perspective kasi our parents know when to punish us, when to reward us. So I think I'd still choose the behavioral perspective kasi I believe that I believe in positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. I believe that that's how a child should grow, should be surrounded. Yun yung environment na dapat. Not too lenient and not too strict.
I am BG Albarazin, age 21. Civil status, single, no children. Occupation, student. The problem actually comes from an external factor called in the environment. Change the environment in a way. If you change it, that would be the one that will lead the patient to rid themselves of the disorder. On the other side, the humanistic approach is the problem is within themselves. That the doctor or the person changes the behavior of the patient, which will lead the patient to find the problem all up in themselves. Yeah. Well, that's number one. The behavioral perspective, it's actually easier to point out the problem because like I said earlier, it's an external factor, it's outside. However, the humanistic perspective, it's more vague because like it's found inside, so it's like an inner journey and stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, it's harder to pinpoint from the behavioral perspective since I'm guessing my parents provided, oh, we kind of had a good life, so my parents provided me with the things I needed, which was like materialistically outside. So it was like all of the problems I had got washed away since, yeah, that's stuff right there. Well, since it's not me, it will be like an example of my kid. I would like to choose a humanistic approach because I would like mind fuck the person, yeah? It's like make it mentally unstable, I don't know. So it's like a thing, yeah, since it's vague and all, it's like a humanistic perspective would change his life to a more fruitful self-enlightenment.
Okay, I'm Pia Kapan, 15 years old. By profession, I'm a counselor, but I've been here in Student Office for the last 8 years. 3 children, and only 1 husband. As a counselor and as a mother, I'd rather go for behavioral perspective because in humanistic perspective, we always want to. There's innate goodness in person and always wanting to become a good person. However, we are always affected by our environment. So, practitioner, I'd rather go for behavioral perspective because much of our behavior, our ideas, and even our beliefs come from the environment, the kind of environment that we have. So, in the province. And generally, our place was peaceful, quiet, and because I come from Batanes, so we have very good. I can say that I had a very good environment, and I was raised with a lot of love. So I would choose behavioral perspective. Because usually, our future is determined by the present, and that's the environment also.
I'm Pamela Elizabeth, 22 years old, and I graduated from the University of Santo Tomas, major in psychology. Familiar with the behavioral and humanistic approaches in psychology since we were able to tackle these concepts when we were in our first year college. The behavioral approach has its advantages and disadvantages. For the advantages, it can quickly change the child's behavior in a short period of time, and they will grow up to be obedient individuals and learn that the parents have authority over them. On the other hand, these behavioral techniques can reduce their effectiveness on children over time. And when the parent is not present, the child may revert back to previous actions. In the humanistic approach, parents connect with their children by allowing them to express their own feelings. It involves active listening and communication of own feelings. An advantage of this approach is that children may voice out their opinions and ask questions to their parents. The disadvantage of this approach, however, is the fact that the children may not pay attention to their parents and it requires a lot of patience from the parents. In my case, the behavioral perspective was used when I was a child, but later on, the humanistic approach was applied. For me, I prefer the behavioral approach since children are more motivated when they know that they'll get something from their actions. Also,
for us, behavioral approach affects the most. One good example is from family.
For example, for our older sibling, they will be our role model because we idolize them. Then what we tend to see is what we tend to do.
First lessons are from our parents. So, whatever we learn from them, at first, we're gonna grow up learning about.
They're like family to us, so we tend to please them in any way.
Peer pressure sometimes builds our behavior. For example, if we go with a smoker, sooner or later, we tend to smoke also. Then, in time, we adapt what they do, and we would influence others.